The first thing that struck me, even before the laughter, was the way they looked at her. We were only a few minutes into my wife's company dinner, and already I felt like an outsider, an audience member at a play where everyone else knew their roles. The conference room in the downtown hotel was all glass and chrome, city lights flickering outside. Waiters weaved through the crowd with drinks, and someone at the far end of the table made a joke that sent a ripple of laughter around the room. My wife, Hannah, smiled, her eyes lingering just a second too long on the man across from her. That was the hook, the moment I should have noticed, but I told myself I was imagining it. I'd spent the afternoon fighting traffic, running late, and now, in my crumpled shirt, I felt exposed. I forced a smile as Hannah made the introductions. "This is Mark, my husband," she said. Her hand was light on my shoulder, almost like the touch of a stranger. The man across from her, Lucas, she called him, stood to shake my hand. He was all easy charm, the kind of guy who never had to try too hard. His laugh was loud, and when he turned to Hannah, his eyes crinkled at the corners. Dinner blurred by. I remember the clink of cutlery, the low hum of conversation, and the way Lucas leaned in whenever Hannah spoke. I told myself it was nothing, office camaraderie. But when dessert arrived, Lucas threw his head back and laughed at something Hannah said, then turned to me and, with a wink, asked, "So, Mark, how does it feel being married to the office superstar?" Everyone laughed, but Hannah's cheeks pinked. She looked away, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face, a mixture of embarrassment and something else. Pride? Guilt? I tried to push the thought away, but it gnawed at me. On the drive home, Hannah was quiet. The city lights smeared across the windshield, and her phone buzzed twice in her curse. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff," she said, but she didn't look at me. That was the first thread, tugged loose. By the next morning, it had unraveled further. A week later, I found myself scrolling through our dashcam footage. It started as a joke. Hannah had forgotten where she'd parked after her late meeting, and I told her our car's camera had probably caught it. But as I skimmed through the grainy video, something caught my eye. The dashcam had switched on at 11:42 p.m. There was Hannah standing outside an apartment building I didn't recognize. Lucas's car idled at the curb. He stepped out, walked around, and opened the door for her. They talked for a moment, too close, her hand brushing his arm. Then he leaned in, just for a second, before she turned away, glancing furtively at the street. My stomach twisted. I rewound the footage, watched it again. There was nothing overt, no kiss, no embrace, but the intimacy was unmistakable. I didn't sleep that night. When Hannah left for work the next morning, I watched the dashcam again, pausing on the moment her hand touched Lucas's sleeve. It was such a small gesture, but it told me everything. I started noticing things I'd never seen before. The way Hannah's phone was always face down on the counter. The extra hours at the office. The sudden weekend meetings. She laughed more on the phone, her voice softer, lighter. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the evidence kept piling up. One Friday, I waited outside her office, claiming I was downtown for a late meeting. She was surprised to see me. "Lucas and I were just finishing up a project," she said, her smile tight. Lucas appeared behind her, his hand on her shoulder. "Mark, good to see you again. We were just grabbing a drink to celebrate closing out the quarter. Join us?" I wanted to say no, but I followed them to the bar across the street. The drinks flowed, and the conversation was easy. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Lucas ordered for Hannah without asking. She laughed at his jokes, her hand brushing his whenever she reached for her glass. On the way home, Hannah was quiet again. I pressed her. "Is there something going on between you and Lucas?" She bristled. "Don't be ridiculous. He's just a friend. You're being paranoid." But I wasn't paranoid. I was desperate. That night, lying awake, I decided to confront her. But when the moment came, the words caught in my throat. Instead, I found myself following her. It was a Tuesday, and she'd told me she was meeting a client for a late dinner. I watched from across the street as Lucas's car pulled up. Hannah climbed in, glancing over her shoulder before closing the door. They drove to the same apartment building I'd seen in the dashcam footage. I waited, my heart pounding, as they disappeared inside. An hour later, Lucas emerged alone, his expression unreadable. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past. My hands shook on the wheel. The next morning, I confronted Hannah with the dashcam footage. She froze, her hand halfway to her coffee cup. "I can explain," she started, but her voice faltered. "Explain what? That you were outside his apartment at midnight?" She looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. "It's not what you think. We were working late. I didn't want you to worry." "But you lied. You said you were meeting a client." She looked away. "I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. There's nothing going on." But I didn't believe her, and the more I pressed, the more defensive she became. The days that followed were a blur of arguments and accusations. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, scrolled through her emails when she left her laptop open. I became someone I didn't recognize. One night, I followed her again. This time, I parked down the street and waited. Lucas's car pulled up, and Hannah climbed in. I followed them to a restaurant on the edge of town. They sat at a corner table, their heads bent together, hands occasionally brushing. When they left, Lucas walked her to her car, his hand on her lower back. She turned to him, her face lit by the glow of the streetlights, and for a moment I thought they might kiss, but they didn't. She got in her car and drove away. I confronted her again that night. This time, she didn't deny it. "We're just friends," she said, her voice trembling. "But I won't stop seeing him." I stared at her, numb. "Then what are we doing?" She looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "I don't know." The weeks that followed were agony. We lived like strangers, passing each other in the hallway, speaking only when necessary. I tried to focus on work, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind replayed the dashcam footage, the late-night drop-offs, the way Lucas looked at her. One night, unable to sleep, I drove to the apartment building. I sat in my car, watching as lights flickered on and off in the windows. I wondered which one was his. I wondered if Hannah was there now. The next morning, I found her packing a suitcase. "I need some space," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't argue. I watched her go, the door closing softly behind her. The days blurred together. I went through the motions, work, eat, sleep, but nothing felt real. I checked the dashcam footage every night, hoping for answers, but all I found was emptiness. One night, months later, Hannah called. "Can we talk?" she asked. We met at the same restaurant where Lucas had laughed at the company dinner. She looked tired, her eyes ringed with shadows. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything." I waited, unsure of what to say. "It wasn't just about Lucas," she continued. "I felt invisible. At work, I was someone. At home, I felt like I was fading away." I took a deep breath. "I wish you'd told me." She nodded. "I know." We sat in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. "I'm moving out," she said finally, "for good. I need to figure out who I am." I nodded, the words catching in my throat. As she left, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was just sad. I went home, deleted the dashcam footage, and tried to sleep. Months passed. The pain faded, replaced by something quieter, a sense of acceptance. I started going out again, meeting friends, rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. "Mark?" It was Lucas. I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," he said, "for everything that happened." I didn't know what to say. "I cared about her," he continued, "but I never meant to hurt you." I hung up without replying. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without waking in a cold sweat. Maybe Lucas's call meant nothing. Maybe it was a desperate attempt to clear his conscience. But it was a strange marker in the timeline of my life. A moment where everything didn't revolve around what Hannah had done or what I lost. The world was moving on, and maybe I could too. The next morning, I drove to work in silence, the hum of the engine and the low chirp of the radio filling the emptiness. I passed the old apartment complex, the one where the dashcam had caught Hannah and Lucas so many times, and for the first time, I didn't feel the ache of betrayal. Instead, I felt a distant gratitude for the truth, however ugly. There's a kind of freedom in knowing, in not having to wonder anymore. Work was uneventful, but I found myself staring at my colleagues with new eyes. How many stories were hidden beneath their composed faces? How many secrets? How much pain? I watched Jenna, our finance director, laugh too loud at a joke, her eyes darting to her phone every second. I thought about infidelity, about how wounds like that can shape a person, make them cautious, analytical, maybe even cynical. I wondered, briefly, if Jenna had her own apartment complex, her own Lucas, her own dashcam footage. At lunch, I sat alone, picking at a sandwich. My phone buzzed, a message from Hannah. "Can we talk again, just for closure?" I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. The last conversation had felt final, but maybe there was more to say. I agreed, proposing a coffee shop near her new place. The city was changing with the season, leaves drifting in lazy spirals, the air tinged with wood smoke. I arrived early, watching couples walk by, their arms linked, their laughter spilling into the street. I wondered how many of them were happy, how many were hiding something. Hannah arrived, her hair pulled back, a new jacket I'd never seen before. She looked older, or maybe I was just noticing the lines for the first time. "I wanted to apologize again," she said, voice trembling. "I know it doesn't fix anything." I nodded. "You don't have to keep apologizing." She looked at her hands, fingers worrying the seam of her sleeve. "I'm seeing someone," she said, almost whispering. The words stung, but not as much as I'd expected. "Lucas?" She shook her head. "No, someone from work, but not him." I laughed, a bitter, short sound. "You have a type." She looked up, her eyes wet. "I don't know what's wrong with me, Mark. I keep trying to fill something I can't name." I leaned back, feeling the weight of all the months behind us. "You're not broken, Hannah. You're just searching. We both are." We talked for an hour, about nothing and everything. She told me about her new apartment, her attempts at cooking, her failures and small victories. I told her about work, about the silence of the house, about how I'd started running again, sometimes for hours at a time. She smiled, a real smile this time. "I hope you find someone, Mark. Someone who makes you feel seen." I shrugged. "Maybe we all just need to see ourselves first." She nodded. "Maybe." When we parted, there was no drama, no tears, just a quiet understanding that this chapter was really over. I walked home that evening, the city lights blinking on one by one, and felt something like relief. The days became weeks, and my life settled into a new rhythm. I ran before work, cooked simple meals, called my parents more often. I found myself less afraid of being alone, more willing to sit with the silence. One Friday, Jenna from finance invited me out for drinks with a group. I hesitated, but decided to go. The bar was crowded, laughter bouncing off the walls. I watched my colleagues, their small dramas playing out in glances and gestures. Jenna slid into the seat beside me. "You look lighter," she said, half smiling. "Divorce will do that," I replied, trying for humor. She nodded, her eyes serious. "Or it can make you heavier." We talked for hours, about work, about families, about the strange ways people hurt each other. She told me about her own divorce, the betrayals that had chipped away at her trust. I told her about Hannah, about the dashcam footage, about the way Lucas had laughed that night at the company dinner, like he knew something I didn't. "It's always the moments you never expect," she said. "That's how you know the truth is real." We closed the bar, walking out under flickering streetlights. She hugged me, warm and solid. "Let's do this again," she said. I agreed, and for the first time in a long while, I meant it. That night, I watched the dashcam footage one last time. The grainy images, the blurred faces, the way Hannah lingered outside the apartment, the way Lucas's car pulled away slowly, headlights fading. I realized I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I was looking for closure. I deleted every file, every frame. The past was over. It was time to see what would come next. Spring arrived, soft and tentative. I kept running, further and faster. Sometimes Jenna joined me, her laughter echoing down the empty streets. We talked about pain, about forgiveness, about how wounds shape us, but don't have to define us. One morning she asked, "Do you ever wonder what you'd say to Hannah now?" I thought about it, the anger, the grief, the aching need to understand. "I'd tell her thank you," I said finally, "for forcing me to learn who I am, for showing me what I don't want, for letting me go." Jenna smiled, squeezing my hand. "That's more than most people get." We stopped at a cafe, sunlight streaming in through the windows. I watched the city move outside, the endless rush of people, all of them carrying their own secrets, their own wounds. I realized I was happy. Not in the way I'd been with Hannah, not in the way I'd imagined happiness would look, but happy all the same. Months passed. Jenna and I became something more, tentative, hopeful, careful. We didn't make promises we couldn't keep. We let the days unfold, slow and uncertain. One evening, I got a message from Hannah. "Hope you're well," was all it said. I replied, "I am. I hope you are too." We didn't speak again. Jenna moved in, her toothbrush next to mine, her laughter filling the house. There were hard days, arguments, doubts, memories that wouldn't fade. But we faced them together, honest and unafraid. The dashcam was gone, the footage erased, but the lessons remained. Trust, I learned, isn't about certainty. It's about choosing to believe every day in yourself and in someone else. It's about accepting that people are flawed and that love is a risk. Sometimes, at night, I remembered that company dinner, the way Lucas laughed, the way Hannah smiled, the way I felt the world shift beneath my feet. It was a moment that changed everything, but it didn't destroy me. I survived. I grew. I found love again. If you connected with my story, please like, comment, and subscribe. At night, I slept with the window open, just listening to the quiet city, and woke up without the old ache in my chest. Life reassembled itself in slow, jagged pieces. There were still mornings when the old sadness crept in, when the memory of Hannah's hand in mine, Lucas's careless laughter, or the blue flicker of the dashcam footage would flash before my eyes. But they didn't have the same power over me anymore. I'd learned how to breathe through it. I'd learned that pain could shrink. Jenna and I fell into a rhythm, gentle and new. She was patient with my silences. When I confessed one evening that sometimes I still dreamed of Hannah, she only nodded, as if she'd expected it. "Grief is a long road," she said, "but it doesn't have to be lonely." We spent weekends exploring the city. Sometimes we'd drive out to the coast, parking by the cliffs to watch the sun slip beneath the horizon, the air cold and salted. At night, she'd fall asleep on my shoulder, and I'd watch the play of headlights on the ceiling, thinking about how quickly life could turn from ordinary to extraordinary, and back again. But the past, I realized, never truly left you. It just changed shape. One rainy Friday, as I was leaving work, I saw a familiar figure across the street, Hannah. She was hurrying beneath a red umbrella, her hair longer now, her pace quick. For a moment, I considered calling out. Instead, I watched her disappear into the blur of traffic and rain and felt a strange warmth, gratitude, or maybe just closure. That weekend, Jenna found the old dash cam in the back of my closet. She brought it out, holding it in her palm like a relic. "Do you want to keep this?" she asked. I hesitated. "No," I said finally. "Let's get rid of it." We took it apart together, recycling the pieces, laughing at how much weight a little plastic box could carry. When it was gone, I felt lighter. The house felt lighter too. But the true shift wasn't in what I'd lost, it was in what I'd gained. I'd survived betrayal and heartbreak, and somehow I'd found love again. I'd learned that trust isn't a guarantee, but a daily choice, a leap of faith. Still, sometimes at night, Jenna would ask about the dinner, the infamous laugh, the way things had unraveled. She wanted to know, not out of jealousy, but because she understood that stories need to be told to lose their power. So I told her everything. I told her about the company dinner, how Lucas's joke had sliced the air, how my world had tilted. I told her about the dashcam footage, the late-night drop-offs, the slow, sickening realization that my marriage was not what I thought. I told her about the confrontation in our kitchen, Hannah's tears, the empty apologies. Jenna listened, her eyes steady, her hand warm in mine. "That must have been hell," she said. "It was," I squeezed her hand. "But it's over now." She smiled. "Not quite. You're still here, and I'm still here." We sat in the darkness, letting the stillness settle around us, feeling the truth of her words. The company Hannah had worked for went under that year. I saw it on the news. Layoffs, lawsuits, the whole thing, a slow-motion train wreck. I wondered if it hurt her to watch her career unravel, or if she'd already moved on. I never reached out to ask. Lucas, too, faded from my life. Now and then, his name would pop up in conversation, always attached to someone else's story. I never spoke of him, not out of bitterness, but because he no longer occupied a place in my narrative. He was a closed chapter. One spring day, Jenna and I drove out to a flea market on the edge of town. The air smelled of grass and fried food. We bought old records and mismatched mugs, laughing at our terrible taste in music. As we were leaving, I saw a couple in the distance, arms around each other, heads bowed. For a split second, I thought it was Hannah and Lucas. My heart stuttered, then settled. It wasn't them. Just two strangers, lost in their own world. "I used to think I'd never trust again," I told Jenna as we walked back to the car. She looked at me, her eyes kind. "But you did." "I did," I said, "with you." She smiled, and I felt a quiet certainty settle inside me. The past was a country I'd left behind. I was home now. There were still moments when the old doubts crept in, when I'd catch a glimpse of Jenna texting late at night, or hear her mention a coworker's name with a little too much affection. But I'd learned to breathe through the panic, to ask questions instead of making accusations, to trust until given a reason not to. One evening, months later, Jenna came home late from a work dinner. She was flushed, her hair windblown. For a moment, the old fear gripped me. Images of Hannah, of Lucas, of the dashcam footage looping in my mind. But Jenna saw the look on my face, and she came to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "It was just dinner," she said, reading my thoughts. "Nothing more." I nodded, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. "I know," I said softly. "I trust you." She smiled, and I realized that was all either of us could do. Choose trust, again and again, even when it felt impossible. As summer turned to fall, our lives settled into a gentle routine. We built something new from the ruins of the old, a life marked by honesty, forgiveness, and the quiet courage to begin again. One night, as we lay in bed, Jenna traced circles on my chest with her fingertip. "Do you ever miss her?" she asked. I thought about it, the way Hannah used to laugh, the way she'd curl into thee on cold nights, the dreams we'd once shared. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not the way I used to. It's like missing a story you read a long time ago. You remember how it ended, but the details start to fade." Jenna nodded, her head resting on my shoulder. "I hope I'm a better ending," she whispered. "You are," I said, meaning it. We fell asleep like that, tangled together, the past fading into the dark. Years passed. The pain dulled, replaced by gratitude, for the lessons learned, for the second chances, for the love that grew in the cracks left by heartbreak. Jenna and I faced our own challenges, job losses, family struggles, health scares. But we faced them together, anchored by the trust we'd fought so hard to build. Sometimes, late at night, I'd find myself scrolling through old photos, wedding pictures, vacations, moments frozen in time. I'd feel a pang of sadness, but it was always followed by a wave of relief. I'd survived, I'd grown, I'd found happiness on the other side of loss. One autumn evening, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew crisp, Jenna and I hosted a dinner party for our friends. The house was filled with laughter and music. Someone spilled wine on the rug, and we laughed, cleaning it up together. As the night wore on, I caught Jenna's eye across the room. She smiled, and I felt a surge of love so strong it almost hurt. Later, as we washed dishes together, she leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For choosing me, for trusting me, for letting me love you." I pulled her close, holding her tightly. "Thank you," I whispered back, "for being my second chance." The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I'd learned that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, that trust is a choice you make every day, and that love, real, lasting love, is worth the risk. If you made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed my story, please like and subscribe. Morning light crept into the bedroom, casting thin gold lines across Jenna's sleeping face. The world outside was quiet, but for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional trill of a bird. I lay there, listening to her soft breaths, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. The air smelled faintly of the coffee Jenna always set up the night before, a ritual that had become ours, a small promise that tomorrow would be gentler than yesterday. I got up and padded into the kitchen, bare feet cool against the tiled floor. The coffee machine sputtered to life, filling the condo with that rich, earthy scent. I stared out the window, watching the city blink awake. The view was different now. Same skyline, but it held new meaning. It was ours. Sometimes I still thought about Hannah, not out of longing, just curiosity, the way you wonder about a closed chapter, whether the characters found their way. I'd see her name pop up on social media, attached to a hiking photo or a new job announcement. The ache was gone, replaced by something quieter, a kind of gratitude, maybe, for the lessons stitched into every wound. Jenna joined me, hair mussed, wearing my old college hoodie. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, her chin resting on my shoulder. "You up early?" she murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Couldn't help it. The city's putting on a show." She smiled, pressing a kiss to my neck. "Let's watch it together." We settled on the couch, mugs warming our hands. The world outside was painted in autumn colors, burnt orange, deep red, the kind of beauty that makes you forgive the cold. I let the silence stretch, content in its comfort. After breakfast, I headed out for a run. The air was crisp, biting at my cheeks. Fallen leaves crunched underfoot, their smell earthy and sharp. I remembered the countless times I'd run this route, mind churning with old worries and suspicions. Now, each stride felt lighter. Passing by the apartment block where Hannah used to live, I slowed, glancing up at the windows. A flicker of memory, the dashcam footage, the late-night drop-offs, the uncertainty that had gnawed at me. I breathed it in, let it out. It was just an address now, not a battleground. Back home, Jenna was sprawled across the living room floor, papers scattered around her. She was working on a design pitch for her agency, brow furrowed in concentration. Her determination had always impressed me, the way she threw herself into her work with abandon. I watched her, feeling the familiar surge of affection. She looked up, catching my gaze. "You're staring. Do I have coffee on my face?" "Just thinking how lucky I am." She grinned. "You say that now. Wait till you see my mood when this deadline hits." We spent the afternoon together, her working, me reading. Sometimes she'd ask for my opinion on a color scheme or a word choice. I'd offer it, glad to be part of her world. The easy rhythm of our day felt like a miracle. No secrets, no careful tiptoeing, just honesty. Later, we met friends for dinner at a cozy bistro. Candlelight flickered on the cables, the scent of rosemary and garlic thick in the air. Laughter bounced off the walls, stories spilling across wine glasses. I watched Jenna tell a tale about her childhood, hands painting pictures in the air, eyes bright with joy. It struck me then how far I'd come. Once, I'd been the quiet one at the table, carrying too much weight to join in. Now, the laughter felt like music. I leaned in, adding my own stories, feeling the warmth of community surround me. On the walk home, Jenna linked her arm through mine. The city glowed around us, neon signs, distant sirens, the pulse of life. She squeezed her hand. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, choosing my words. "Sometimes, not the way I used to. It's just part of the story." She nodded. "I get that. Me too." We walked in silence, boots crunching on the last brittle leaves. At home, she curled against me on the couch, her head on my chest. "I'm glad we found each other," she said softly. "So am I." The night drifted on, quiet and safe. Days blurred into weeks, each one marked by small joys, a shared joke, a new recipe, an impromptu dance in the kitchen. We faced ordinary problems, broken appliances, work stress, family drama, but they never felt insurmountable. With Jenna, challenges became puzzles to solve together. One Saturday, we drove out of the city, windows down, autumn wind whipping through the car. Rolling hills and golden fields unfurled around us. We stopped at a roadside farm stand, filling a basket with apples and fresh bread. At the edge of the orchard, Jenna paused, eyes searching mine. "Do you ever worry it'll happen again? The secrets, the hurt?" Her honesty caught me off guard. I thought of Hannah, of Lucas, of the nights spent drowning in doubt. "No," I said. "Not with you. I trust you." She nodded, relief softening her face. "I trust you too." We wandered through the orchard, sunlight spilling across our path. The world felt wide open, full of possibility. Back home, I found myself reflecting on forgiveness, not just of Hannah, but of myself. I'd carried guilt for so long, blaming myself for not seeing the signs, for not being enough. But Jenna taught me that love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up, every day, ready to try again. Winter came, blanketing the city in quiet. Jenna and I spent evenings curled up by the fire, reading, talking, dreaming. The cold outside made the warmth inside sweeter. One night, I stumbled across an old journal buried in the back of my closet. Pages filled with confusion, anger, longing. I read them, feeling the pain that once felt endless. I turned the final page and closed the book. Jenna found me sitting there, lost in thought. "Everything okay?" I nodded, just letting go. She smiled, sitting beside me. "I'm proud of you." We watched the snow fall, the world hushed and new. Spring arrived, bringing fresh starts and green shoots. Jenna's career flourished, mine followed suit. We traveled, explored, built a life defined by honesty and hope. Sometimes I'd glimpse Hannah's face in a crowd, or Lucas's name in an email thread. The old ache would flicker, then fade. They were characters in a story I'd outgrown. Jenna and I celebrated our anniversary at the same bistro where I first realized I could laugh again. The waiter recognized us, bringing a complimentary dessert. To second chances, Jenna toasted. I raised my glass, to trusting again. We clinked glasses, savoring the moment. Looking back, I realized the dashcam footage, the late-night drop-offs, the proof I'd sought, was never really about Hannah or Lucas. It was about fear, about the need for certainty in an uncertain world. I'd learned that love thrives not in surveillance, but in vulnerability. Now, the only footage I cared about was the memories Jenna and I made. Road trips, birthdays, quiet mornings. Each one a testament to the simple, radical act of believing in each other. Life moved forward, as it always does. I carried my scars, but they no longer weighed me down. With Jenna, I'd built something strong, something true. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment and hit like. It really helps the channel. And subscribe for more true stories.